Alright, so this is the coding walkthrough video for prototype 0.7 of Fortitude. Now, this is quite a similar one to last week in the way that it's another quality of life update. And what that basically means is that not a whole lot of actual major content has been added. This has mainly just been a week of bug fixing, general refinements, and kind of experimentation and improvements and things like that. So little things rather than big, massive additions. So this is probably going to be quite a short video because in terms of actual code, not a lot's been done. It's mainly just been fiddling with standard Unity elements and things like that. And I've just realised you can't see my cursor. Give me 1 second. There we go. There you can. But yeah, it's mainly been fiddling with things like this, like testing out numbers and orbital mechanics and things like that. And just, yeah, generally testing things out. But there have been a number of additions, important ones, which I'm going to go through. And as you can probably see here, the most important one of which is lighting. The game now has a light system, which is obviously it's a step forward in terms of development, and it's also very cool. It looks very, very cool. So we've also got a basic, very, very basic sound system in the game, which you will hear in a minute, hopefully, if it works. And yeah, general refinements and bug fixes, which will also go through. And there's also been a couple of minor mechanics additions to the ship and how it controls, and a few bits and pieces that I'll walk through as I go along. So yeah, what I'll do first of all is hit play and show you all the new additions, and then go through the code and the design behind them. So the player is the same as normal, apart from one slight addition. He blinks, and the reason for this is because when you're zoomed out like this and you're remote controlling the ship, you can't necessarily see him. So in order to combat that, he now blinks. It's only a temporary thing so I can see him, because hopefully... I'm just going to unpause it because there's an event that happens. I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, the idea behind that is just so I can see the player in comparison to the ship, because in the full game, hopefully there'll be a bit more of a visual prompt. I'll just hit play again there. Should have just hit pause. Oh well. But yeah. So he's got a little light. As you can see as well, the whole game is darker now. And if we hit E to take remote control of the ship, you'll notice that upon pressing W, it plays a sound, which you can't hear, I've just realised. It plays a sound. That might be quite loud, I do apologise. It plays a sound, and it's also got a little bit of light there. Just getting the ship. So yeah, it's kind of like a muffled rocket noise, because it's meant to sound like you're inside the ship and you're hearing the rocket noise from inside, because obviously there's no sound in space, so you can't hear it from the outside. Oh, there's the narrative event. Yeah, I've been messing around with asteroids and things like that, so we're going to get hit by that. And that's the other noise. When you crash into something, it makes a little noise, little bump. But yeah, so I've been experimenting with asteroids and putting like orbital scripts on them, the ones that I've used for the planets, and just seeing what happens really. So that one's been timed so that after a minute or so of this, a massive cluster of asteroids comes in and just wrecks everything. So yeah, little kind of narrative things, and the sounds and the lights, they're all kind of coming together to push forward the overall kind of fear theme that we've got for the game. That's the kind of purpose behind all of these bits. So yeah, this week's mainly been a week of experimentation, as I said. It's just fiddling with the idea of sounds and light and little events that just kind of... There's that noise again there. To just kind of get across that theme. Oh, yeah, there we go. Turn that down. Where is my other booster gone? Oh, it's... Well, that's interesting. It appears to be stuck inside that asteroid. Let's just let's just pretend you didn't see that. But yeah, so I've been experimenting with that, and to achieve that, it was quite simple really. The lighting system basically added a bunch of lights, so there is one over here in the sun that kind of lights up everything, and things get lighter as you get close to it and dark as you get further away. So obviously, because we're far away, currently residing next to Esteban, it's quite dark, so you need a torch to see. And that torch is here on the player. If we go, I can't zoom in because he's too far away. Let's zoom all the way in. But yeah, so there's a torch on the player that projects upwards, as well as two smaller lights down on the bottom of the ship that basically are coded to light up whenever you press the W key. Basically, whenever you activate the going forwards and thruster controls, it activates. And yeah, I mean, oh, actually, I didn't show you the spotlight. I've just realised. Yeah, if you press V now in order to combat the darkness, there is lights. Just realised I didn't show you that. But yeah, so if, as you can see, we're spotlighting, lighting up the area around us. So again, that's meant to be atmospheric and kind of add to the overall fear of the unknown, kind of scary element of the game that we're trying to get across. And we've basically got these here, and we've got a little bit of script I'll show you in a second that basically makes it so that when you press V, it toggles the lights on and off. Again, pretty simple stuff, but extremely effective atmospheric wise. And it looks cool as well. Visually, the game looks a lot better now, I think, than it did last week, so that's great. Sounds work in a similar way. I'll just go to the ship. On the ship, we've now got an audio source, and then a sound. We've made a new script called Sounds, and it basically calls various different audio clips, which are over here in the assets folder. Yeah, there they are. And just calls them and plays them whenever certain things happen. So yeah, there's that, and there's one more thing I'll go through just before we go into the coding of it. So yeah, the autopilot system of the ship has had a bit of an update, because before obviously you can just remote control like that, but now it's got more of an autopilot function as well. Basically, if you hit the Q key, and it is a bit buggy so it might break, hope it doesn't. If you hit the Q key, the ship slows to a stop, and it will hold its position, because what the code does is takes its current velocity and applies an equal and opposite force to it. Essentially make it look like the ship slows down and it's controlling its rotation. So the idea behind this function is that when you're refueling in when you're refueling in like a gas giant or whatever, we've been sandwiched, because you have to be outside the ship in order to refuel. If you get out of the ship, because of the gravity of the gas giant, the ship will just get sucked into the planet and you'll be stranded. So in order to combat this, there's a kind of autopilot thing now, so when you're outside the ship, refueling or whatever, the ship itself is using this function to slow, yeah, see, that's the bug, to slow itself down and keep itself orientated correctly. Now, that it is kind of buggy at the moment, I'm not really sure why. Sometimes when you, like if I just move forward here, if I spin it a lot, sometimes when you tap Q, it just gets itself into a state and just blows up. Don't really know why it does that. I'm hoping it's going to be an easy fix. I know it's something to do with the rotation slowing down rather than the ship slowing down, which is the least important bit of it. So, but I'm off topic. Yeah, that'll be fixed at a later date, basically. Oh, and I should point this out as well. As you might remember from last week, the game had a number of frame rate issues, especially when you sped up the timescale. So in order to combat that, what I've done is use the Unity Profiler, which is like a performance reader. It checks the performance as the game runs and sees what uses it the most. And as you can see here, most of it is taken up by this orange colour. And if you look over here, orange represents physics. So what the profiler is basically saying is that most of the frame rate issues are down to the physics. taking up a massive amount of performance and CPU usage. So in order to combat that, what I've done is added a few lines of code here that basically go, if the player is, I mean, this is the optimization script I showed you last week, but it's a little bit more complicated. So if the player is further away than 1,000 Unity units from whatever the game object is that the script is attached to, then disable the rigid body. Yeah, disable the rigid body and disable the scripts on it. It specifies specific scripts here because it's primarily designed for the asteroids because they're going to be the biggest performance hogger in space. But what it basically means is that the asteroids get completely disabled whenever the player is 1,000 meters. Let's say meters, even though it's Unity units, but let's just say meters. Whenever the player is 1,000 units or more away. Yeah, and that essentially just stops them using physics, and the frame rate was actually considerably improved when I did that. Getting above 70 now, which is decent. But yeah, so it's not ideal, because obviously ideally I'd want the universe to run as normal, even though the player's not there, but the asteroids aren't especially important. Obviously, yeah, the only time they really matter is when you're nearby to them, so I didn't think it was too much of an impact on gameplay in order to stop them whenever they are far away. So moving on, in terms of C# code, we've got the sound script. What this does is takes the audio clips, the rocket and the thudding noise that we've previously got. They're from YouTube, by the way, they're just placeholder. I did edit them a bit on Audacity, though, in order to kind of make them more muffled, to sound like they're coming from outside the ship rather than just standard noises. And what we've basically got here is if you collide with something tagged with space, then the clip that the audio source that I showed you earlier has currently inside it is the thud clip, and then it basically plays that clip. So whenever you collide with something tagged with space, like an asteroid, it plays the thud noise so that you get a thud. Yeah, it's pretty simple. And then this bit here, whenever you are inside the ship or remote controlling the ship, well, I need to get rid of that bit actually. But yeah, whenever you're inside the ship or controlling the ship and you press the W key, then it plays the rocket sound. So basically means that you get a nice rocket noise whenever you're moving the ship forward. And I should point this one out actually. This is the script for the astronaut's blinky light that I showed you earlier. So yeah, as you can see there, blinking away. And it's pretty simple really. Basically it takes the light as a game object and disables it upon startup, and then adds a simple timer float and gives it, adds on time, not does time, so it goes up as time goes on. And if the timer is greater than 1, then set the blinker to true. If it's less than 1, set it to false. And if it's greater than 2, set it to 0. So what it basically means is it starts at 0, once it gets to 1 second, it enables the light for a second until it gets to 2 seconds, and then it goes back to 0, and because at 0, or anything less than 1, it's set to false. It basically blinks on and off, it's the bottom line. And yeah, it's just a locator beacon really until we get something more visually pleasing to show the player where the astronaut is. Because they're quite small in comparison to the ships, you can't really see them when you're zoomed out. This is basically to combat that. And then this script, yeah, this is the lights. I've just got to find, yeah. I've got a little light function down here. Basically, if you press the V key and the lights aren't already on, i.e. it is light boolean, it is false, then set the main torch to true, which we've established here. Yep, as you can see, the lights have been set there, and the main torch is set to the ship's lights. And basically, whenever you press the V key and is lights false, then set the torch to true. And the ship has also got a blinker on its right hand side, which is here, I believe. Yeah, it does have a blinker on its right hand side. Come on. Hit V. Yeah, there you go. That's kind of like, you know, like how aeroplane lights blink at night. It's this just another light on it to kind of make it a bit more interesting visually. Set that to true, and obviously set the other lights to true as well. And then if you press the V key and the lights are already on, then set them to false. And then this is exactly the same thing as the blinker code over there. Basically, a simple timer to blink the light at the bottom right booster on and off. And that's all there really is for that. The only last bit is the remote control function here. Now, you may be thinking, why is it in the vehicle transition script as opposed to the space and navigation script? Well, that's because the ship needs to do this autopilot function no matter what you're doing, whether you're in control of it or not. As soon as you tap the Q key, it's got to be doing autopilot all the time. It can't just be doing it because you're going to be controlling the astronaut whenever the ship's autopiloting, so it's got to be able to do it on its own. And of course, the space navigation script is disabled whenever you're in control of the astronaut, so we can't put it in there. So we've got a simple, well, not simple actually, but a new function called automated that takes the current velocity and angular velocity of the ship's rigid body, and basically makes it so that when you press the Q key and you're outside of the ship and autopiloting isn't already running, then is autopilot true, i.e. autopiloting is running. Sets all the thruster, the physical thruster things to true. Yeah, it sets all the physical thruster things to true, and then basically if autopilot is true, which it would be up here, then set is thruster true, so the autopilot uses fuel, so you've got to it adds a bit of tension if the ship's constantly using fuel while you're outside of it. And then it adds a force, which takes the current velocity and applies an equally opposite force to it, hence the minus, times 100 times time to delta time to kind of speed it up a bit. And I think the 100 times time to delta time is what's getting it all angry and breaky with this, with the rotation, because as you saw earlier, sometimes it kind of glitches out and destroys itself. I think it's this bit here that's causing that, but I'll look into that a bit later on. Yeah, so it basically adds an equally opposite force to slow the ship down and an equally opposite force to stop it rotating, if it is rotating. And then if you press the Q key and you're already autopiloting, then it disables this autopilot, so you're no longer doing the balancing out forces, and also disables all of the functions for the autopilot. So hopefully, actually I'll pause that so I'm not, there we go. Hopefully it won't detonate itself, but I'll just demonstrate it again here. So yeah, tap Q and it slows down to a stop. Ooh, it almost worked. Definitely something up with the rotation there, but you see like the basic functionality is there. I am actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try something, because I'm pretty sure the problem lies with that. Drop that down to a 10 rather than 100. Come on. Alright. Tap the Q. Did that fix it? Let's try a bit more rotation. Yes, I think it did. Yep, there we go. Bug fixing. Live bug fixing, ladies and gentlemen. I just fixed that function. Oh, I'm well happy with that. So I'm going to try it again, just in case it's a bit weird, because Unity behaves oddly sometimes. Yeah, there we go. So the idea behind this is that, as I said, you'll be in like the atmosphere of a gas giant or whatever, and you want the ship to kind of counteract the forces of gravity that are pulling it down so that it sits still. And I won't show you this now, but because it's still in development, but the idea behind that would then be that you tether the player to the ship via a physical rope, like tether thing, so that the player doesn't get dragged off by the planet's gravity, so that the player can kind of use the rope and inch down to the refueling and get refueling, and the ship will kind of hold them up with the autopilot function. But yeah, that is the extent of the changes this week, other than minor changes to the orbital and planetary functions, just kind of refinements and things like that. The plan for next week is to do the first planet, like the surface of the first planet, which will be El Caloda, and that will be quite fun. And yeah, I look forward to showing you next week. Goodbye.